Hello and welcome to the Drummergy Podcast for April 15th of 2025. It's tax day, and nobody ever, I don't think, is very excited about tax day, but here it is. Here we are. Oh, man. I might be drinking more than coffee today. Yes, today is episode 122. Can you believe it? 122 episodes of this. Today I'm going to talk about being at WGI Indoor Percussion Finals that happened in Dayton, Ohio this past weekend. Lots of amazing stuff, so I'll get into that. First of all, sorry for I'm 10 minutes or so late. I went to hit go live and I had no video, I had no audio, and I could not figure out. I tried shutting the computer off and on. And then when it came back on, it said that I had to update my computer. Sorry, my nose is itchy. And so that took like 6 minutes for it to update or do whatever it does and get prepared. So I'm sitting here like, come on, computer, cooperate with me today. So, a lot of times I want to try to talk about what goofy holidays are happening. There aren't any. It's just, like I said, it's tax day. And there we go. We always do the extension. So I don't think that our taxes get done until like October. And Mary is always the one that deals with it. She's the one. She does not like being the one, but she is. So there you go. All right. Raise your hand as I'm going to see your hand if you know what indoor percussion is or what WGI is. This is a world I got exposed to back in 2018. I didn't even know this activity existed until about 2017. So to back up a little bit, there was a point where Mountain View High School needed a drumline coach, and I sort of see, James has got his hand raised. All right. Mountain View High School needed a drumline coach, and this was when my son Christian was a freshman. So 2016, I think. 2016, 2017 school year. He graduated in 20. So I think it's around that time. I had not been involved with marching band or any of that stuff since 1991, 92 football season. And I marched with the Blue Thunder Marching Band on snare. And I've told this story before. I wasn't even a student, but the band director at the time, Dave Wells, and I talked with him, and he said he would make an exception for me. So that's what I did. So I hadn't been around any marching stuff at all. I had no clue what was happening from that time until 2016. And so much stuff had changed over that time. I did not know how to tune marching drums. I knew nothing. I knew nothing, but I could manage students. So that was like the biggest thing that I brought to the table. I could help manage teenagers, which is interesting too, because at that point in my life, I would see teenage adolescents just around in general, and it really bothered me. So, wow, Bonnie, did you just grab that off of Google? WGI stands for Winter Guard International, an American nonprofit organization that governs and hosts competitive events for indoor color guard, percussion, and wind ensembles. It is known as the sport of the arts. There you got it, people. Bonnie Smith is here with that education. Thanks, Bonnie. I was about to get all of that. Yes, I tease Bonnie. Bonnie is my favorite person to tease. And she knows it. At any rate, I didn't know anything about marching percussion per se. Like I had been so disconnected for so long, and so much stuff had changed. And then on top of it, you're dealing with teenagers. So I called up my buddy James Harrison and I said, help. So he was kind enough to donate his time and his knowledge, and he came and rescued me and kind of helped get me lined out. And that first year I was just holding on. I was just surviving. It was a new band director. There was just a lot of chaos that was that had ensued, and it was just survival mode. So once I got that first marching band season under my belt, I felt like I had a more stable idea of what was happening. But I tell you all this because through that, the students at the school had started mentioning about TVIA, which was the Treasure Valley Indoor Association, and talking about indoor percussion. And again, completely new to me. I had no clue what that was. I didn't know what it meant. I had no education whatsoever in any of it. So I started asking the band director about it, and he just kind of immediately dismissed it as it's not something to really be involved with. It takes a lot of time. It's his opinion wasn't worth it, the hassle of it. So I kind of wrote it off too. Well, then when my second year came around and I started to kind of figure out how all of this worked, there were a couple competitions in marching band season that year where the drum line had scored higher than it had in a long time. Now, I don't know if I could really take too much credit for that, because we did have a handful of students that were pretty accomplished players to start with. So that benefited everything. But the band director had asked me if I was still interested in finding out more about indoor drumline. So I said, sure. And the students were really excited about it as well. So I got involved with the Treasure Valley Indoor Association. Still didn't have everything that we needed. So I started watching YouTube videos on what WGI was, what indoor percussion was, and got a really good idea. So for you out there that don't know, first of all, you probably are familiar with high school marching band or college marching band that you may have seen on TV. But there is an organization called DCI, which is Drum Corps International. The easiest way for me to explain that level of marching band is to say it's the NFL of marching bands. So you don't find woodwinds per se on the field. It's all brass and percussion, and then they got a huge front ensemble where you have your marimbas and your vibraphones and things of that nature. But just the quality and the level and the intensity of the activity is pretty high up there. And of course, my son Christian got really interested in DCI and drum corps when he was a freshman in high school. The color guard coach we had at the time had formerly been with the Blue Devils drum corps group out of Southern California. And my son is a person who likes to be challenged. He's always been that way since he was a little kid, to work on more difficult and challenging things, from Rubik's Cubes to drumming. So he was really enthusiastic about it. So of course, Dad became really enthusiastic about it. And with the assistance of James Harrison, like kind of opening my eyes to how all of that stuff worked, I was off to the races. So when we started the indoor program is performed on a basketball court. So it's just percussion. Now they've added like bass guitar in there, sometimes guitar, some other specialty instruments that come out. And there's a lot of dance choreography type elements within the indoor percussion. And I was looking at it also as a way for the students at the high school to keep their skills up through the winter before marching season rolled around again. So it had a lot of benefits to doing it. So the first year, the band director found Tanner Hosley, who I think was going to Boise State at the time, and his main instrument was tenors, or also known as the quads. So these are the guys that have 4, 5, 6 drums that hang off of them, shallow shell drums, pretty heavy instrument. So that was his main deal, and he was part of the Oregon Crusaders, I think. I can't remember for sure what the name of the group was, but based out of Portland, Oregon. And so Tanner would go there every weekend for rehearsals, and he was part of an indoor program. So he helped me get things really off to the races at Mountain View. And we picked some music called Icarus, and the show is about Icarus flying too close to the sun and his wings melting and then him falling from the sky. If you're familiar with the Icarus story. So we picked the music. Tanner designed a pretty basic show, but also to protect the floor in a gymnasium, you have these huge vinyl tarps that cover the whole or most of the gym floor to protect that from any damage that you could foresee maybe coming along, dropping equipment or things like that on it. So as that got started, then I started getting more and more involved with what was happening. And I still didn't at that time even really understand what WGI was. I didn't understand there was a world of that outside of the Treasure Valley. Other than finding some YouTube videos of other high school groups or things like that was happening, just to kind of have a better understanding of what was going on. So as that season progressed and kind of established ourselves, and there's not that many groups in the Treasure Valley that were involved. So at that time it was Mountain View, Fruitland High School, and there's one other one, Capital there and Capital did more of a stand there and play. I think Middleton High School eventually got involved. I know Cuna High School's involved now. So there are more groups, and then there was an independent percussion group called Rhythm Armada. And also in all of this drum chaos is the color guard group from marching band performs a show. So they're spinning rifles and flags and have a lot of dance choreography, typically to a pre-recorded song. And so that's what they do. So there you have the WGI, as Bonnie put here in the comments. WGI stands for Winter Guard International. And so that's a winter focused activity for color guard, percussion, and then they added a winds. Maybe they always had a winds thing, but I'm not aware of when that may have started, but I know locally there have been times where there was a winds group. I know Armada had a winds group that has kind of come and gone. I don't think that they're active this year, but at any rate, moving forward. So my second year doing indoor, I chose the music. I wrote the show. I did all the teaching. I did everything on my own with Mountain View. And that was out of the 4 competitions, we got first place twice, which isn't to say a lot because there's very few groups that we competed against. So if you're one of 3 or 4, it's not too hard, I guess, to advance the first place. Not like when you're competing against 30 other groups or something like that. James says the wind division is newer. Thanks, James. I figured it probably was. So of those 4 competitions, the second year we did a show called Bump in the Night, which I designed all the choreography and I taught the front ensemble and I taught the battery all on my own, which was a lot of work, not just while I was at the school, but sitting at home staring at the wall, like trying to design a show. But we got 2 first place plaques or trophies that year, which was the first time that Mountain View had done that since like the school had opened. So that was a big deal for the students, for me, and just for the band program in general. Kind of re-energized that it was possible to play at a higher level, to have more success. Chris McCall says, don't downplay the victories. A win is a win. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. Excuse me. So moving forward, so my son Christian is really, really involved with all of this. And he too is doing like a deep dive into excelling as a snare drum player in marching band, and learning what it took to be a part of a bass line, the tenors, even how cymbals. Like I said, he just like really super involved with the marching arts. And I worked with them as much as I could, but I have my limitations as far as that goes. And so James Harrison, being a friend and somebody that I trust, I said, you need to go take lessons with James. Dad can't help you get to where you need to go with this. I'm at the edge of my knowledge in this department. Trinette, thank you. Good morning to you too. So sent Christian to work with James. James helped him get to that next level of playing. And yeah, it was good stuff. And then the following year was 2020. And we all know what happened then. I had a really awesome show put together called Metamorphosis. We bought used costumes or uniforms from another high school drumline group in Mankato, Minnesota, who I'm friends with the percussion director there. And he had sent me a message saying, hey, we have these uniforms. I don't know if this would work with what you've got going this year. And turned out they were fine. And we were able to purchase those uniforms and have them shipped here for about a third of what it would cost to buy brand new uniforms. So that was great. We had a floor because the color guard coach that I worked with had personally bought a floor for his program, and then he was willing to share it with mine. So he and I had a really great working relationship, the two of us, and just really enthusiastic about the program. So in 2020, I really stepped it up with costumes, the props that we had, and things like that to put a cool show together called Metamorphosis. So it was not about caterpillars being butterflies; it was about people becoming machines. So it was a really cool. But that blasted COVID situation shut us down from finishing this season, and that was really hard. Especially on the students. And we all know that how that affected people in so many ways. It just, everything was a mess. So the following year, we didn't really know what to expect or what we were going to be allowed to do, because it was like everybody was like coming out of the hole to see if the smoke is cleared, right? To see what we could do. So that year, that 21 was a program that was really hard to work with, because we didn't know if we had to be 6 feet apart or if we could do stuff, mask, no mask. Everything was so up in the air from day to day. It was a very stressful situation. But anything that we did that was, for one, outside of the Boise School District was easier to deal with in the Meridian School District. And then when you got out to like where Fruitland is, I can't remember is that Payette School District? I don't know. At any rate, they had fewer restrictions. And so our competition that year kind of lived more over in in Fruitland. And it was great. And so we were able to survive and kind of get things going again. James says, WGI has become the most innovative form of the marching arts. The commonplace things of narrated shows, electronics, expressive dance movements, lightweight uniforms that allow non-restricted movement, etc. And DCI has adapted tons of ideas from the indoor programs. Yes, 100%. I'm going to put James's comment up here, so if you guys want to reread it, you can while I continue. So as things got moving, I knew more about what was happening. and then my son being so involved. So Christian, I think, has 18 seasons of marching between high school marching band, high school indoor, independent indoor, Boise State, and then doing battalion drum and bugle corps. And then he just had his last performance in Dayton, Ohio with the Blue Knights Indoor Percussion Ensemble. So I think all of that is 18 seasons total, spread out through all of those individual groups. And that doesn't include any of the audition stuff that he had done. He had auditioned for Troopers. He had auditioned for Broken City indoor group in Southern California. This family and Christian has spent an exorbitant amount of time, money, and effort for Christian to be able to do this. Now, this is all time-sensitive stuff, too, like age-sensitive. When people get involved with marching band, typically in high school, they're 14 or 15 years old, go through their whole high school experience, and then sometimes high school kids end up being in drum corps. The open class groups tend to have more minors in it than the world class groups tend to have students in there that, excuse me, who are 18 plus. But when you turn 21, that's it. When you're 22, you can't do drum corps anymore. And Christian's about to turn 23. And so the age out year for WGI is 22 years old. So Christian is 22, and this is it for him as far as performing goes. Now, he had been teaching the drumline group at Timberline High School, which was kind of the same job I had at Mountain View when I was there. After 2021, the band director at Mountain View resigned from his position, had a different job, and the new band director came in and got all new staff. So I was kicked to the curb, which at the time was really, really hard to accept for me. I felt burned. And whoever the guy that came in to replace me, of course, I'm watching all of this from the sidelines because I still had 2 kids in the marching band program. So this thing that I was so intensely involved with, now I'm suddenly sidelined, right? Not doing anything except watch my kids be involved. And the producer was the booster president. So like the family is still super plugged in doing all these things while I'm on the other side of the glass. It was really, really difficult for me. And part of it might be a little bit selfish because I had put so much time and effort in trying to change the culture of the approach of that group. I really enjoyed the students, and so it was an emotional thing for me to do that. Then they ended up getting Nico Jasnowicz in there as a drumline coach, and he is absolutely amazing. He's just an amazing person. He's become a really good friend of mine, and he has taken that percussion group at Mountain View High School to way beyond anything that I would probably be able to do. So it was like, it's really cool to watch that now. And of course, I'm so busy with my own private teaching practice, I don't have the time to dedicate to that. I tell you all this because just to kind of give you a little bit of how my involvement began with all of that stuff. So WGI, Winter Guard International, which does color guard, percussion, winds, and like James says, all these production elements have come into these shows. So they have these giant vinyl tarps that I mentioned that cover the gym floor, and a lot of these are specially printed floors. They call them a floor. They can be like, for a really inexpensive one, like $400 up to a few $1,000s, depending on what imagery you might have printed on it. Now at Mountain View, one side of the floor was all white and the other side was all black. So it was really easy to flip over to kind of match the theme of whatever show that we did. I liked the black side because I tend to choose themes that were a little more darker, moodier, let things of your imagination go. So the black floor kind of mixed in with that. But when I went and saw these groups in Dayton, Ohio, so there was 3 days of competition, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Now, I didn't know this until I actually got to Dayton, Ohio, is the place that we were going where Christian was performing was the University of Dayton, Ohio Arena. So it's like their basketball arena for the school, which is kind of like going to Boise State's arena, which it's called Extra Mile Arena now. I've always called the Pavilion because that's what it was when I was in high school, was the Pavilion. So not quite as many seats as that. It was more like, when you're in the Pavilion and the whole, I think it's the mezzanine level, the whole orange section. The Dayton, Ohio arena was probably about that size. So I didn't know, because I had other percussion coaches that I know all over the United States. There's like 4 of them I was trying to meet up with, none of which I did. But there were 3 other venues having drumline groups perform, and I had no idea. So just at the Dayton arena for the preliminaries, they had 65 groups perform, which is a lot. And of the 65, I watched 63 of them that day. I was in the arena all day long with a short, like after every block of 8 groups or so, they would have like a 15-minute break. And then at lunch, I think they had like a 40-minute break and another 40-minute break for dinner. And Christian's group, the Blue Knights, they didn't even perform until 10:15 that night. And the last group to perform went on at 11. So of the 65 groups, they're switching out groups every 11 to 12 minutes. There's a brand new percussion group on the floor because their show lasts 7 to 8.5 minutes. And within that, they have to get within that 11 to 12 minutes, they have to get their whole thing set up, do their performance, and then get the whole thing cleared out for the next group to come in. It's a pretty crazy dance of chaos that happens when they do that. I mentioned the floor would be thematic to whatever the show is. Their costumes or their uniforms they would wear sometimes were multi-purpose uniforms. So they might come out completely dressed one way, and somewhere in the show, they might remove a jacket or something turns inside out or whatever. And then they're completely in a different uniform, and it happens in the blink of an eye. Some of these props are very simplistic. Some of them were huge. And now these things have to fit through doorways, these props. They come through the doorway, and then these things are hinged and they unfold into huge, huge props. Some of them, being 12, 16 feet tall, some of them, maybe even taller, but it all unfolds and latches together within seconds. And then it all collapses again and it's all cleared out there in a matter of minutes. It's really crazy how fast all of that happens. And of course, the performers or students or whatever you want to call them, I try not to call them kids. They all have a very specific job they have to do. They have this huge team of parent volunteers that help get everything in and out quickly. Because if you don't it's all timed. So the judges have a timing penalties if you start too early or you don't get out of there quick enough, because then you start delaying the show. And just crazy cool. James says there's usually multiple sites spread out through Ohio and Kentucky with the goal of making it to Dayton for the finals of each category. Yeah. So the first day that we were there, when we started watching, it was the concert scholastic concert percussion. So it's stand still. These groups typically didn't have a battery, which would be like multi-snare players and bass drums and tenors. It was more front ensemble, some hand percussion stuff with the drum set player. And even those groups were pretty stellar in their ability and sound that they made. Oh, and I'll also add there's a sound system, a PA that gets set up because they put microphones on all the front ensemble stuff, because it's really, really difficult for the front ensemble to keep up with the volume coming from the parking lot. I said parking lot because I'm reading James's comment as I'm talking. The front ensemble just can't compete volume wise with the battery. That's what I'm trying to say. That's like me glitching out pretty heavily. Yes, the parking lot is an event in itself. So not only do you have all these groups performing in the arena, those groups are warming up outside in the parking lot, and there's a designated place for that. So they call that watching the lots, and you can go out and see all these drum lines doing these warm-up routines and or practicing part of their show music. And though they just want to get their hands moving, they want to get the blood flowing, they got to get warmed up so that they're ready to perform when their time comes. So that could be pretty intense and pretty entertaining. And I think that James would agree with me. This activity and what they're playing just keeps reaching levels that you would never even imagine. The speed at which they play, all the hybrid drumming rudiments that they have, they're really make a very dense drum part. There's so much happening. And then not only that, like if you're one snare drum player out of like 4 or 6 or 8 or 9, getting all of those guys to play together exactly the same, that's challenging. So how do these students end up in these groups? What is happening? Well, people who are generally interested in marching band from their high school get interested in doing drum corps, or they get interested in doing WGI. And so those groups hold auditions prior to the season starting. So for the Fisher House, the one drum corps that was obtainable and reasonably close was the Battalion Drum and Bugle Corps based out of Salt Lake, but their camps and their rehearsals can be anywhere in that greater Salt Lake area. So spend a lot of time going back and forth down there for auditions. And even if you're a veteran player like you did at the season before, you have to re-audition the next year. And it gets very, very competitive, even for some of those open class groups. The lower level of DCI is called Sound Sport. So that's the lowest tier. And now they have an all ages category to it as well. And I don't know how the scoring for that is, or the competition. It may just be like exhibition type of a category. I'm not completely clear on that. So anyway, I'm trying to get back to Dayton. So it's Christian's age out year. I mentioned I watched 63 of 65 groups perform that day in Dayton Arena, and 3 other venues. One was further north, one was further south, one was just right on the border in Kentucky, as James had mentioned, and probably just as many groups of each of those that were performing. All of that just a huge attraction. So for preliminaries, that's a fairly easy seating arrangement in the arena, and it's general seating, so that's no assigned seating. So wherever there's an open seat, you can get there. As the day got longer and the groups got more and more, you get into the world class groups. The audience, the attendance kept going up more and more and more, so the stadium got fuller and fuller and fuller as the night went on. Christian's group did not advance to preliminaries. So I don't know how many groups overall were in world class. And I don't understand how all the scoring works and who you've competed against in the throughout the season. But I believe that Blue Knights went into it sitting in 16th place, and they take the top 20 of those groups to move to the preliminary, or excuse me, the semifinals. Sometimes I get preliminary and semifinals mixed up on which one's which. After that competition, they were sitting in like 24th place, so they were missing being in the top 20 by 4 groups. Now, when I say scoring, it's not like, oh, this group scored a 70, and then the next group up from them was like at a 78. They're splitting fractions of a hair in scoring. So you could have like I'm just using this as an example because I don't know for sure, but like, let's say the group that was in the 20th spot, like if they scored a 78.523, maybe the group that was in the 21st spot scored like a 78.243. That's how close the scoring works. It's really just, I mean, you'd have to like really zero in and blow up the picture to see how close these groups are within each other. It's pretty crazy and impressive. So because it was Christian's age out year, when he aged out of DCI, I bought him, they have these souvenir drum heads that you can buy. It's a actual 14-inch Remo drum head that has, because Remo's a big sponsor of DCI and WGI, and they had a specific thing for that year of 2022. Was that Christian's age out year? Yeah, because Christian age out, and then our number 3 son Ian was in battalion the next year. So I grabbed Christian a souvenir drum head for indoor. Let's see if I get this where it's not so. It's a very shiny drum head. So they have these for sale at the venue. So this will go on Christian's wall, I'm sure. It's just a really cool souvenir to have. I'm getting a little scattered in my thoughts. Sorry. So when, I follow Flow Marching and WGI and DCI on social media, and of course, since this whole Dayton competition has come to a close, the first place winner was RCC, and the second group in second place, I think it was Rhythm X. These shows were unbelievable. These are more well-established groups, and the level of instruction they get, when those groups are that successful and they have that audition process, they could be really super picky about who they will take and not take. And the level of commitment that's expected of the students is gets more intense, and because they want to win, right? So you want to have all the best players that you could get. So when I'm reading comments from some of these groups, one was a high school group out of Avon. I think Avon is in Indiana. I think I might be wrong. I'm trying to keep track of who was who and where they were from is really very hard to do. At any rate, this high school group had like 60 students that were performing in the group, plus all the parent volunteers and the staff. So they probably had nearly 70 people involved with this group, more than that. So 60 in the group, probably 20 to 25. So let's say 80 to 85 people were part of this whole operation. Their show was called Float, and they had this huge black backdrop of movable panels to create this backdrop for their show. And then they had this cable and truss system that went up, and there was obviously a group of about 20 dads that were erecting this thing very, very fast. But in the show, they have these cables that are really hard to see, and the snare drums are floating in the air and there's some of the players are standing on the ground playing. Some of the players are on the shoulders of other people so they can play the drums up higher. But it created this illusion of the drums just floating in the air. Now, the moment in the show that this happens lasts about 15 seconds. So they put this whole massive truss system to go together for like a 15-second part of the show. Really, really impressive. And there's so much happening that it's like, it's hard to know what to be looking for. But I did get to see the group perform a second time on Friday. Well, that show was featured in one of like a reel from the WGI social media pages. So I started clicking through comments, and the ignorance, I'm going to use that word, the ignorance from people spouting off that if your group has a lot of money, you're going to be successful because you can afford to have you can afford to pay for props like that. So, well, that brings up the question, how much does it cost for these students to be involved with WGI? Depending on the group, each student is paying anywhere from $1,500 a person up to $2,800 or $3,000 per student to perform with these groups. Well, what does that cover? Where does that money go? Cost of staff. I wrote it all out. Where is it? Right. So the staff instruction, designing the show, travel, competition fees, the floor, the props, the uniforms, the instruments, there's all a cost associated with all of that. And anybody that's put gas in their car in the last 10 years knows that that's expensive. So imagine filling up a diesel bus, a charter bus to get students anywhere. That's very expensive. And then, well, where do they stay when they travel? A lot of times they're sleeping on a gym floor somewhere. So that's the life of those young guys and gals out there doing it. Is they're sleeping on a gym floor, sharing locker room showers like we did when we went to school, all of those kind of things. But the point of some of these people that were complaining, there's one, they were specifically talking about this group from Avon who had that show float and like what it must cost to be able to afford this metal trussing that went up and put all this stuff together. The thing that they don't understand is, yes, some of that can be very expensive, but that doesn't mean it was, or that's where the money is going. Is that if you can afford to buy really fancy printed floors and have these big elaborate props and these elaborate costumes or uniforms, that you're automatically going to be viewed by the judges as being better. And because you can afford a flashier show, so to speak, that you're going to win, you're going to go to that. Now, yes, it's impressive, but RCC, who won first place, had very minimal, subtle, very simplistic props. They weren't very big. They didn't have an elaborate floor. They just outperformed and outplayed everybody. So that's how they got to first. They had other people they competed against that obviously had way bigger props. Now, going back to the expense part of that, so much of all of that is donated time by people who know how to put those kind of things together. So if you have students who are in the group whose dad or dads are welders, are engineers, are in the construction business, that have an idea on how mechanical things work, those guys typically donate all of their time and a lot of times their resources to put those things together. And that was the same when I would build props for the marching band shows with Mountain View High School. I would go to some of my suppliers from my landscaping connections, and I would get materials donated to me so that we could build props. James says it's just it's amazing to watch the transfer and setup of each show. It's truly unbelievable. Very similar to the speed of how fast the Super Bowl halftime shows is done. Teamwork is like clockwork. Yeah, exactly. Like I mentioned, every 11 to 12 minutes, there's a completely new group ready to perform. And they, through their props and their costumes and everything, completely transform the arena into a totally different visual thing. It happens so quick. And then you watch the show, and that whole thing comes apart, and the whole new group comes in and puts that together. It's like watching magic. It's super impressive. Well, so I think that's pretty much it as far as these people complaining about all this money. It's like, I think that Christian told me the Blue Knights backdrop props they use, which I think there's like 5 or 6 of them, are the exact same framework that they've had for 14 years. They've had those props for that long. They just changed the fabric on them to match the show each year. So the expense isn't to purchase those things every single year. Now, the other thing is when a drum line or a DCI group, because they use props too, and WGI uses props, then you start to see those for sale if you know where to look. And so another group might go, they're going to buy those and repurpose them. They might paint them different. They might put different fabric on them. But a lot of this stuff is totally getting repurposed. I think it was 2 years ago, the Troopers out of Wyoming had this big metal sun thing that they had built because their show was called Lasso the Sun. And it was silver and gold. And the way that it moved was pretty trippy and really cool. And this thing's unbelievably big. This stuff has to be seen on a football field. So you can't have little tiny props because it just doesn't have the same impact. So they reused it again last year, but it was all painted black because they had a darker themed show, but they repurposed that prop again. So this stuff gets reused. It's sold to other groups along with musical instruments. A lot of times, some of the more successful corps, that equipment starts to wear out, and they can sell that off to maybe a startup group or a group that would really appreciate it more than some of the ratty equipment that they have. So this stuff floats around. It gets sold off. So these people that just say, well, these groups have this unbelievable amount of money to do it. They're not wrong per se, but I think they're wrong to assume that that's what makes them successful. But you just have, it's volunteers. And even the staff that they might be getting paid, it's more of a stipend. It's not like they're not living off of, off of this. For example, when I did indoor for Mountain View, now how long does the season last? So these, from auditions to the end of Dayton, Ohio, you're looking at like 6 to 7 months of things that are leading up to that. Well, how does that staff get paid for that long? So for Mountain View, let's see, I did auditions in November because I would do them right after D3, and D3 District 3 competition here in Boise happens the end of October. I usually take a couple weeks off, do auditions before Thanksgiving break, then after Thanksgiving break, then it's on to rehearsals. So let's say the beginning of November to the beginning of April. So you got all of November, December, January, February, March. So let's say 5 to 5.5 months. My fee for that was $1,000. Now, when you add up the amount of time that I actually spent at the school, it came out to like $2.80 an hour. And that doesn't include all the hours I spent sitting in here putting a show together. So I'm not getting rich. I'm barely getting anything for my time. $2.80. James says people will always complain about the success of others. Avon is a very successful program in marching band, WGI, guard, percussion, and winds. They do have high participation fees, but the students and parents are footing the bill. Yep. Yep. I think anywhere where you get into a geographical area that there's a bigger school, there's a bigger interest. Like for me with Mountain View, our programs that we have here are just so relatively small to what's out there in a bigger metropolis. You're talking about Dayton, Ohio. You've got Indianapolis, Dayton, Ohio, Columbus, Cincinnati. You have all these huge cities that are so close to each other, and just the competitiveness of it is so much higher, and the demand is so much greater, and the expectations are so much higher. There's just there's more pressure, I think, in a good way to be able to do that. So there's no way that a school from Boise, Idaho, a high school, or even an independent group from here is going to be able to compete dollar wise with those groups. But you just make the best of what you have available to you, and hopefully make that experience for those people as great as it possibly can be. What am I missing here? The audition process. So for rehearsal, for WGI, these groups are typically only rehearsing on Friday and Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday. And the rest of the week, those students are spread out. Like Christian, for example, moved to Denver, Colorado to be close to be able to rehearse with the Blue Knights every Friday and Saturday. So your homework that you do is really super critical to the success of the group. And if you're not cutting it, then you get cut. Drum corps, DCI, when you're with those groups, you're with that group 24/7 for for 3 months. And those rehearsals can last for 12 hours every single day, 6 days a week, sometimes 7. A lot of times for Sunday is a day where they kind of get a break, but sometimes those turn out to be travel days. So you're not really getting a chance just to sit down and chill. You're on to the next thing. Again, the demand and the expectations are so much higher. All of this to be said, I was unbelievably super impressed by every group that I watched. Every group had something very unique and special about it. I had posted a video on my Facebook page of probably little short clips of about, 15 to 18 groups. And that just scratches the surface of anything that I saw. So if you want to like a quick exposure to that, just go on my Facebook page. I'll load it to my YouTube page probably later today. Wow, just super impressive. If you guys want to know more about WGI, just go to YouTube and start searching like Rhythm X, RCC, Strike Percussion, Impact, which is from Washington. You can look up the Blue Knights. You'll see Christian performing. That was really cool. So proud of him. One thing I noticed when I sat in the arena, James says people in Idaho would flip out of the participation fees involved in those high-level programs. Oh yeah, absolutely. So I had parents flipping out that their fees to do Mountain View Indoor program was like $225. It's just a total different animal, as you well know, James. Yeah. Congratulations, Christian, on being part of WGI in Dayton. Yeah, very cool to watch my son go through this whole process. He had some hurdles to get over here and there along the way, but he really overcame so many of those, dedicated so much time and energy into that. And I'm glad that he aged out of drum corps. I am happy that he aged out of WGI. I just think as a parent and as a drummer myself, and the love I have for music, and to watch one of my children's love for music just really had exploded like that. I'm glad he aged out and had no regrets. Like, oh, I should have participated one more year. I should have auditioned for this. Right. He doesn't have any of these I should have situations really, which is great, which is, of course, he had influence from me and his mother, but more importantly, he had influence from people involved in both those activities that really encouraged him to 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 write it all out and to finish it up. Really super cool. So, sitting in the arena watching these groups perform, a lot of times there's a big influx of people in and out because they would come in to see a specific group that they were involved with. A lot of times parents, they would come in maybe the group before and then leave right after they were done. And I would watch around in the arena and you would see, like, especially people that were right in front of me, they would get done with the performance. They'd stand up and they'd start cheering and clapping and they had tears in their eyes. And I thought that was so touching, because the pride a parent has for watching their kid do something super cool and something that's very difficult to do. And it was the same for me when I saw Christian perform. Now we totally were under the impression, or we thought that, they would make it to semifinals, no problem. So we really thought that we would see him perform again on Friday, but they did get eliminated in the prelims. So we were texting with Christian. We didn't get to see him that night. And I just knew that had to be emotional thing for him, and to the disappointment maybe that the whole group was feeling that they didn't go to semifinals. And me being able to sympathize or empathize with him on something that you were expecting that didn't happen. I guess there's always that risk, that somebody's going to outscore you, which was the case. So Friday, when we finally got to meet up with him, I gave him a big hug. He gave me a big hug, and I was kind of overcome with emotions a little bit too. I had big tears in my eyes. I was so excited to see him and so proud of him. And so there was a lot of that happening around in the arena. If you just took a moment to look around and go, yeah, these people are sharing these moments is really touching, really, really super cool. So getting to Dayton, Ohio. So Mary and I flew out on Wednesday morning, ended up staying at a pretty sketchy hotel that was about 12 miles or so away from the arena. Not too much to say about that. I was just like, oh, I think we could have done better. Had a nice rental car. Watched everything that happened on Thursday. Friday, we went in and watched a lot of groups that have gone on to semifinals, and enjoyed watching a lot of the groups with Christian, getting to talk to him a little bit, watch a little bit of the stuff out in the lots, go to the merchandise tent to see things. Saw some really cool drum pads. I saw some guys that I did not get to actually introduce myself to, but one was Scott Johnson. He was judging the Scholastic group. Scott Johnson is or was the main guy for Blue Devils. I saw Roger Carter, who is I don't know which DCI group he's with, but he was with Broken City, and Christian had been taking online drum lessons with him. Huge influence on Christian through Roger Carter. I saw EMC Productions, which is Eric Carr, who is a former DCI WGI guy who's does extremely well on YouTube and social media. And I ran across him. He was getting his picture taken with a bunch of different students. And then I saw Bill Bachman walking into the tent as I was walking out. And I've interacted with him a little bit on Facebook and YouTube, but we've never met each other. And then I didn't take advantage of saying hi. Blue Coats, James, is that who Roger Carter's with? Is with Blue Coats? At any rate, I saw these guys and I didn't take advantage of, because usually when you're passing people that quick, they're on their way to go do something. And so I didn't want to really interrupt any of that. But I have seen Eric Carr with EMC Productions a handful of times. Ran into him in Indianapolis the last prior 2 years, and then walked past him again. Blah blah blah. Anyway, yes, Roger Carter's with Blue Coats. See, I can't keep up with who's who and where they are. Christian can rattle this stuff off like I do when I talk about rock bands. Who the drummer is for this band and that band, and who their producer was, and where the band originated from. We musicians seem to know all of these, what we consider important details. So anyway, Mary and I, we flew out Saturday afternoon, came home, got home really, really late Saturday night. And then Mary prepped because she left Monday morning at 3 a.m. and flew to Denver, Colorado, and then drove home with Christian. So she had a turnaround in she was, from the time I took her to the airport to the time she was back home was 24 hours. I think she and Christian got home like at 4:30 this morning. So Mary's been traveling a lot. The week prior to that, she was gone to Disneyland and Universal Studios as just chaperone with the Mountain View High School band. They had the band, the jazz band, choir. Was there another part of that music? I don't know. They had like 3 charter buses full of kids, and they went and did some music clinics and had fun. So Mary, I think, she's hit her limit. Anyway, that's kind of my I just wanted to tell my story of my experience of going to WGI. It was so impressive. There's so much dance and theater and visual things and stuff involved. It's this huge production that goes into a window of about 11 minutes. It's the coordination and the planning and all of that, just so incredible. And then to watch the students perform just at those levels, just mind blowing. So cool. And I'm so glad that I got to experience that. I don't know if I'll ever be back to Dayton, Ohio, because Christian aged out. Elliot doesn't do music, at least not seriously anymore. Ian does music pretty seriously, playing tuba. He's done 1 year with Battalion. He's already contracted to do this next year with DCI with the Battalion. So I'll be going back to Indianapolis in the beginning of August to see him perform again. I don't know if Ian will continue doing that until he ages out. I have no clue. He doesn't know. So the last person that we could maybe lean on is if Jude gets involved with percussion, which he says he has an interest in doing that. So I think that Jude could end up being a pretty good drummer with the influence of his big brother and his dad. I notice sometimes kids don't want to learn from their parents. I've got students that come here who their parent is a drummer or a musician of some kind, and they just don't want to listen to anything that their parent has to say. So they come to me. So that might be the case also with my kids. But thanks for hanging out with me this morning. Next week, I am hoping to have, if you're local, you would know this person. I'm hoping to have Steve Fulton on as a guest, sitting right here. So that should be fun. I got to just try to confirm that. Steve said like about 3 weeks ago he would do it, and so I just need to get that confirmed. And then the week after, I'm going to have Connor Hensley here, who is the drummer for the band Town of Trees. So 2 really cool episodes coming up. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Have an awesome rest of your day, and go watch some WGI indoor percussion groups on YouTube and get a feel. I would take a look at Rhythm X. That show was really impressive. George Mason University was the fan favorite show. So good. So good. Their show was actually sort of in a way mocking how WGI works. they were one of the few groups that got a standing ovation when both times when I saw them perform. I'm sure it happened again when they were in the finals. Yeah, just such amazing stuff. Go check it out. Plus, I got my new drumline hat. It's got some drumsticks on it. I too had to have my own souvenir. Okay, guys, I'll see you next week. Bye.